Ethan never expected his mission to be anything out of the ordinary. As a young human explorer, he was used to traveling between different planets, performing routine surveys and helping establish communication with various alien species. But when his ship landed on the quiet, remote planet of Helios, he felt something was different. The air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar flowers, and the sky above had a strange violet hue she'd never seen before. He had been assigned to gather data about the local fauna, but when he stepped out of his ship and looked around, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a mirage, or perhaps a trick of the light. But when it moved, he knew it was real. A tall, slender figure stood at the edge of the forest, its skin a shade of deep purple. Her features were beautiful, yet alien, with sharp cheekbones, silver eyes, and long dark hair that seemed to shimmer in the soft light of the planet's twin suns. She was unlike any human or alien he had ever seen before. Ethan froze, unsure of what to do. Was she friendly? Was she dangerous? His first instinct was to approach cautiously, but before he could take a step, she spoke. Her voice clear and melodic. "Are you the human from the stars?" Ethan blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected her to speak his language, he thought. He was still far from any known human colonies. "I am." "Are you from this planet?" Ethan asked, trying to sound as calm as possible. She tilted her head, eyes studying him. "I am a rare. I'm older than I look," she said, her voice tinged with both pride and uncertainty. Era's words left Ethan confused. She looked young, probably around his age, but her tone suggested otherwise. He wasn't sure what to make of her. "You don't look much older than me," he said, unsure if that was rude or just honest. She smiled a soft smile, but there was a sadness behind it. "In my species, we mature quickly. We reach adulthood sooner than humans. I've been on my own for quite some time." Ethan nodded, still uncertain. "I see so. ... What are you doing out here? Alone?" Ara's eyes flickered, and she seemed to hesitate before answering. "I'm running away. Running away," Ethan repeated, now more curious than ever. "From what?" Ara's gaze grew distant, her expression darkening. "For my mother. She's ... protective. Too protective." Ethan could see the pain in her eyes. It was hard to imagine an alien species with overbearing parents, but Ara seemed genuine. "What do you mean by too protective?" he asked, sitting down on a nearby rock. He felt an odd sense of empathy for her. The idea of running away from a controlling parent was something he understood all too well. "She wants to control my life. Every step I take, every decision I make, it's all planned for me," Era said, her voice tightening. "I'm not a child anymore. I want to live my own life, make my own choices." Ethan was quiet for a moment, thinking. He had always believed in freedom, the right to choose one's own path, but it seemed that Ara's freedom had come at a high price. "Sounds like she really cares about you," Ethan said, trying to understand both sides. Ara sighed, a mixture of frustration and sorrow in her expression. "Caring is one thing, controlling is another. She doesn't see the difference. She doesn't even understand that I'm not a little girl anymore." Ethan thought about what Arira had said. He'd understand her desire to escape. Everyone deserved the chance to live on their own terms. But there was something in Ara's voice that made him uneasy, something he couldn't put his finger on. "Well, I can't blame you for wanting some freedom," Ethan said finally. "I think we all need that at some point." Era smiled faintly. "I just need to figure things out. I don't need her telling me what to do anymore." Ethan nodded in agreement, but his thoughts wandered to the danger of her situation. If Ara's mother was as controlling as she said, then she might be on her way to find her. Ethan didn't know how far her reach stretched, but the more he spoke to Ayura, the more he realized just how vulnerable she was. "Where will you go?" Ethan asked, suddenly wondering what her plans were now that she was free from her mother's. "Grip. I'm not sure yet," Era replied, looking off into the distance. "But I'll figure it out." The conversation shifted to other things, small talk that allowed both of them to relax. Ayura told him about her homeworld, a distant planet. where the atmosphere was rich with the energy of the stars. She spoke of her people's strength and resilience, their ability to adapt quickly to the harshest environments. As the suns began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow across the landscape, Ethan realized just how strange and unpredictable his life had become. He had come to Helios expecting nothing more than a simple mission. Instead, he found himself sitting beside an alien girl who claimed to be an adult. Running away from her overbearing mother, Ethan wasn't sure what to do next. He wanted to help her, but he wasn't sure how. Should he let her go and continue on her journey? Or should he try to find a way to keep her safe from whatever danger her mother posed? Before he could make up his mind, Ara's expression shifted. Her eyes widened slightly as if she sensed something was off. She stood up abruptly, her body tense. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, standing up as well. Ara's gaze flicked too. The sky, and Ethan followed her line of sight. In the distance, a dark shape appeared, slowly growing larger. It was a ship, and it was heading straight toward them. "That's her," Ira whispered. "She found me." Ethan's heart raced. Whatever plans they had for the future, they would have to wait. Era's mother was coming, and she wouldn't be easy to escape from. Ethan's heart pounded as he stared at the approaching ship. It was larger than anything he had seen on this planet, and the dark shape in the sky made his blood run cold. He could feel the tension in the air, and his instincts screamed at him to act quickly. This was no ordinary ship, it was coming for them. Era, standing next to him, was still frozen in place, her wide eyes fixed on the ship. Her expression shifted from fear to determination. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice steady, but with an edge of urgency. "My mother is here, and she won't leave until she gets me." Ethan looked at Herrera, unsure of what to do. He had never dealt with something like this before. Sure, he'd been on dangerous missions, but this was different. This wasn't just a hostile encounter with an alien species. This was personal. "What should we do?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Era took a deep breath, then nodded toward the nearby forest. "We need to run. She'll be scanning the area for me, and we won't get away if we stay here. We have to hide, at least for now." Didn't hesitate. Without another word, he grabbed Ara's hand and pulled her toward the trees. His mind raced as they ran, trying to figure out how to get them out of this situation. There had to be a way. They darted through the thick underbrush, weaving between the trees and trying to stay as quiet as possible. Ethan could hear the ship in the distance, its engines humming like a low growl. It was getting closer. "Is she dangerous?" Ethan asked between breaths. He didn't want to make assumptions, but everything about Ara's mother screamed danger. The fact that she was willing to chase her own daughter across a planet said enough. Era glanced back, her face pale. "You have no idea," she said, her voice tight with fear. "My mother is one of the most powerful beings in our galaxy. She's not just a protector. She's a force." Ethan's stomach twisted. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into, but he couldn't back out now. He had to help Ira, no matter the cost. They ran for what felt like hours, the ship still overhead, following their every move. Ethan could see the shadows of drones beginning to circle, scanning the area for any sign of life. Era's mother was relentless, and Ethan knew that if they were caught, there would be no escaping her wrath. Eventually, they stumbled upon a small cave hidden among the rocks. It was barely big enough for the two of them to fit, but it was their only option. They squeezed inside, pressing themselves against the cold stone walls, trying to stay as silent as possible. Ethan's mind was racing. What could he do to protect Area? What could he do to get them out of this alive? The weight of the situation pressed down on him, but he couldn't afford to panic. Era was depending on him. He turned to look at her, only to find her already staring at him, her silver eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something he couldn't quite place. But before he could speak, Ara held up a hand to stop him. "Listen," she whispered. "She's coming. She knows we're here. There's no escaping her now." Ethan's heart sank. What do we do? He asked, his voice barely audible. Araz. Gaze darkened as she glanced toward the mouth of the cave. Fight, she said, her voice firm with resolve. We don't have a choice. You can't let her take me back. Ethan didn't fully understand what Arab meant by that. How could they fight someone so powerful? But looking at her, he could see the determination in her eyes. This wasn't just about escaping anymore. This was about Araz's freedom, her right to live her life as she chose. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. All right, but we'll need a plan. Can't just charge in blindly. Ira nodded. I've been running from her for years. I know her tactics. She's smart and she's ruthless, but she doesn't know everything. I can use that to our advantage. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I've learned how to use my surroundings, Era explained. I can manipulate energy, bend it to my will. If we can trap her, we can use that against her. Ethan stared at Arare in surprise. He hadn't realized she had that kind of power. But then again, he had only scratched the surface of her true abilities. She wasn't just any alien girl, she was something much more dangerous. Era closed her eyes, focusing on the energy around them. Ethan watched her, unsure of what was happening. The air around them seemed to hum, vibrating with unseen force. It was as if the planet itself was responding to her. Then suddenly, Era snapped her fingers. A burst of energy shot from her hand, crackling through the air. The ground beneath them trembled, and Ethan felt the temperature drop for just a moment. Before it returned to normal? All right, Era said, her voice calm. We're ready. We just need to wait for the right moment. Ethan couldn't believe what he had just seen. Ira had just bent the energy around them to her will, and it was powerful. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. They waited in the cave, listening to the distant hum of the ship and the sound of drones buzzing overhead. Every second felt like an eternity, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Finally, after what felt like hours, the sound of footsteps echoed through the cave. Era's mother had arrived. The moment had come. Ethan's hand tightened around the makeshift weapon he had fashioned from a nearby rock. Wasn't sure how much help it would be, but it was all he had. Ira stood beside him, her eyes locked. On the entrance to the cave, her expression was set in stone, determined and unyielding. She wasn't going to let her mother control her any longer. Let's do this, she whispered. The footsteps grew louder as the heavy boots of Araz's mother echoed through the cave entrance. Ethan's heart raced in his chest, his palms sweating despite the cold air. He could see Araz's body tense beside him, ready for whatever was about to happen. She had told him her mother was dangerous, but he had no idea just how serious the situation had become. The shadows of Era's mother stretched long across the cave floor as the figure stopped just outside. Ethan couldn't see her yet, but he could feel the power in the air, almost like an electric charge humming faintly. Ow. This wasn't just a normal person. This was someone with enough strength to shake entire worlds. Era's mother, Vera, had been chasing her across the galaxy. But now, she was here, right on their doorstep. Ethan glanced at Arare. Her eyes were locked on the entrance, her body still, but her breathing was steady. She wasn't afraid, not anymore. She had made her choice. I don't want to fight her, Ara whispered, her voice barely audible. But if it comes down to it, I won't back down, Ethan nodded. He had no idea how they could stand against someone with the kind of power Vera clearly had. But Era had already proven she wasn't someone to be underestimated. And maybe, just maybe, they had a chance if they used their wits. The air shifted. Again, and suddenly, a bright flash illuminated the entrance to the cave. A tall, imposing figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the light. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This was it. Era's mother. Vera was everything Era had described and more. She was taller than most humans, her skin a deep shade of blue, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural light. Her armor gleamed, a mix of sleek metal and glowing patterns that seemed to pulse with energy. A plasma rifle was slung across her back, but it wasn't the weapon that made Ethan's heart race. It was the overwhelming sense of power that radiated from her. I know you're in there, Rez. Vera's voice rang out, calm but deadly. There's nowhere for you to hide. Rez stepped forward, her eyes never leaving her mother. Not going back with you, Mother. I'm done with being controlled, not your little girl anymore. Vera's gaze hardened, her expression unreadable. You don't understand, Ira. I'm doing this because I love you. I've always protected you. You can't survive out there alone. You don't get it, Ira said, her voice breaking. Slightly, you've never let me live for myself. I'm not a child. I have my own path, my own choices to make. Ethan watched as the two stood in the tense silence. He wasn't sure what to do. Should he try to intervene? Or would that just make things worse? He wasn't a fighter, but he was starting to realize how much was at stake. This wasn't just about Era's freedom. It was about life and death. I won't let you ruin everything I've worked for, Vera said, her voice cold as ice. You've made your choice, Ira, but you'll soon learn that freedom isn't all it's cracked up to be. The next. A few moments felt like slow motion. Vera raised her arm, and a pulse of energy shot out from her hand, striking the cave wall. The stone cracked and splintered, falling in chunks to the floor. The force was enough to send a shockwave through the cave. Rattling the ground beneath their feet, Ethan stumbled back, his heart pounding. The sheer power of Vera's energy was terrifying. He could only imagine what kind of destruction she was capable of. And yet, Era stood firm, her expression unchanged. Get ready, Ethan, Era whispered, her voice fierce. We're not running anymore. This ends here. Before Ethan could respond, Ara stepped forward, her hands raised, and the air around them seemed to pulse with energy. The ground beneath her feet trembled slightly as if the very earth was responding to her command. Ethan stared in awe as Ira's power came to life. She was no longer the scared girl who had run away. She was a force to be reckoned with. Vera didn't hesitate. She raised her plasma rifle, aimed it directly at Herrera, and fired. The beam of light shot through the air with incredible speed. But Ira was faster. With a swift motion, Ira deflected the shot, sending the plasma bolt flying into the cave wall where it exploded in a brilliant flash. Ethan barely had time to shield his eyes from the light, turned back to see Herrera, her eyes glowing with energy, her hands still raised as she absorbed the power around her. This isn't how it has to be, Vera shouted, her voice filled with frustration. I'm trying to protect you. Ira shook her head. No, you're not. You're trying to control me. Vera's expression twisted with anger, and in a blur of motion, she charged at Herrera. The energy in the cave intensified as the two faced off, their powers clashing in an explosion of light and sound. Era's energy wrapped around her, creating a shield of glowing force that deflected Vera's attacks. But Vera's power was overwhelming, and she wasn't backing down. Ethan's mind raced. Couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Ira needed his help, but what could he possibly do against someone with this much power? That's when he remembered something. The weapon. The makeshift rock weapon he had fashioned earlier. It wasn't much, but it was something. Without thinking, he grabbed it and charged toward the two women. He wasn't sure if it would work, but he had to try. As Vera launched another attack, Ethan hurled the rock straight toward her. It wasn't much, but it distracted her for just a moment. That moment was all Awera needed. She seized the opportunity, unleashing a burst of energy. That sent her mother flying backward. Vera crashed into the cave wall with a loud thud, dazed but still alive. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. It had worked. They had actually done it. But this wasn't over yet. Vera wasn't one to give up so easily. Ira turned to Ethan. Her face a mixture of exhaustion and relief. We can't let her get up, she said, her voice strained. We need to finish this. Ethan nodded. He didn't know how they were going to do it, but he was ready. They had come this far, together. They were going to make sure that Herrera stayed free. The cave was filled with an eerie silence after the intense clash of powers. The air was heavy with the scent of ozone, and Ethan could hear his heart pounding in his chest. He was still trying to wrap his mind around what had just happened. Ara's power was unlike anything he had ever seen. And yet, even after that impressive display, Her mother wasn't down for long. Vera slowly stood up, dusting off the dirt from her armor. She wasn't as hurt as Ethan had hoped. In fact, she looked more furious than ever, her eyes glowing with an intense, unnatural light. "You think you can defeat me?" Vera's voice was cold, filled with a dangerous calm. "You're nothing but a child, a rare, and you human," she turned her gaze to Ethan, "are in way over your head." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He had never faced anything like this before. He had only come to this planet for a simple mission, not to become part of an intergalactic struggle. But now, here he was, caught between a powerful alien woman and her equally powerful daughter. Aira stepped forward, her body glowing with energy, but her expression was focused and resolute. "I'm not a child anymore, Mother," she said firmly, "and I'm not going back with you. This ends now." Vera's face twisted with a mix of anger and sorrow. "You've made your choice, and I will not let you go so easily," she said, her voice low and threatening. The ground beneath them trembled slightly as Vera gathered her power. Ethan felt the shift in the air, like the calm before a storm. He knew that Vera wasn't about to give up. She was going to fight until the very end. Aira's energy flared up once again, forming a protective barrier around her. Ethan could feel the heat from the energy field radiating through the cave. He didn't know how much longer they could keep this up. Vera was relentless, and Aira was already showing signs of exhaustion. "We need to move," Aira said suddenly, her voice strained. "If we stay here, we'll never win." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. He didn't know where they could go, but they needed a plan. Aira's power might be impressive, but Vera was too strong, and they couldn't keep up this fight for much longer. He grabbed Aira's arm gently, pulling her toward the back of the cave. "What about you?" Aira asked, glancing at him with concern. "You can't fight her?" "I'm not going to fight her," Ethan said quickly. "But we can't just stand here and wait for her to destroy us either. We need to find another way." Aira hesitated, then nodded. "You're right. I have an idea. We need to get to the control room." "The control room?" Ethan asked, confused. "What control room?" "The one beneath the cave," Aira explained, her face lighting up with sudden hope. "I've been to this planet before. There's an old base hidden under the surface. If we can reach it, we might be able to use the energy there to turn the tables." Ethan's eyes widened. He didn't know there was a hidden base here, but it sounded like their best shot. "Lead the way," he said, trusting Aira without question. They moved quickly, dodging behind rocks and pillars as they made their way deeper into the cave. The sounds of Vera's footsteps echoed behind them, each one sending a shiver down Ethan's spine. They didn't have much time. As they reached the farthest corner of the cave, Aira stopped. She placed her hand against the stone wall, and the surface began to glow with soft blue light. The wall slowly shifted, revealing a hidden passage beneath them. Ethan glanced at her, impressed by her ability to access the hidden base. "How do you know about this?" he asked, his voice filled with awe. Aira smiled faintly. "I've had to hide here before. When my mother came looking for me the last time, I found this place. I never thought I'd be using it for something like this, but I'm glad I know about it." With a quick glance over her shoulder, Aira led the way down into the dark tunnel. The passage was narrow and winding, and the air grew colder the further they went. But it was a place of safety, and for now, that was all they needed. Ethan followed closely behind, his mind racing. They needed to get to the control room and activate whatever power it had to help them defeat Vera, but he had no idea what they were going to find down there. The tunnel eventually opened up into a large underground chamber. The walls were lined with old, rusty machinery, and the floor was covered in dust. It looked like the place hadn't been used in years. But at the far end of the room, there was a glowing console, screens flickering with ancient data. "This is it," Aira said, her voice filled with relief. She moved quickly to the console, her fingers flying over the buttons. The screens lit up, displaying complex alien symbols and diagrams. Ethan watched as Aira worked, her focus intense. He could hear the sounds of Vera's footsteps growing louder. She was getting closer. They didn't have much time left. "What do we do now?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with tension. Aira didn't look up from the console. I'm trying to access the main power grid, she said, her voice steady but strained. If I can tap into the energy here, we can use it against her. Ethan turned to the entrance of the chamber, his heart racing. The sound of Vera's footsteps grew louder, closer. They had to be ready. Suddenly the lights in the room flickered, and the console hummed to life. Era's face lit up with triumph. It's working, she said, her voice filled with relief. I've got the power. Before Ethan could respond, the ground beneath them shook violently. The walls of the chamber trembled, and the door at the far end of the room exploded open. Vera stormed in, her plasma rifle raised. You think you can hide from me? Vera sneered. This ends now. Era stepped in front of Ethan, her energy flaring once more. Not yet, Mother, she said, her voice steady. Not until I've made my choice. Ethan could feel the power building around them. The final battle was about to begin, and he had no idea how it would end. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let Aref face this alone. The air inside the hidden chamber was thick with tension. Ethan could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Vera had found them. There was no running anymore. The fight for Ara's freedom was about to begin, and he had no idea how it would end. Ara stepped in front of him, her energy pulsing with power. The air around her crackled as she focused, her silver eyes burning with determination. You won't take me back, Mother, Ara said firmly, her voice steady. I've made my choice. Vera entered the chamber with a cold smile on her face. Her plasma rifle was still slung across her back, but there was no mistaking the deadly energy radiating from her. The ground seemed to tremble beneath her feet, as if the very earth recognized the power she held. I've tried to be patient, Vera said, her voice calm, but with a bite of finality. But you're only a child. You don't know what's best for you. I've spent years protecting you, keeping you safe from the dangers of the universe, and now you're throwing it all away. I don't want your protection anymore. Ira shouted, her voice rising with the emotion she had kept hidden for so long. You don't get to control my life anymore. Not your little girl. Vera's expression hardened, and for a moment it seemed like she might lash out. But instead, she took a deep breath and regarded Herrera with a mixture of sorrow and frustration. I do what I do because I love you, but if you want to choose this path, then so be it. I will do whatever it takes to bring you back. Ara's eyes narrowed. I'm not coming with you, no matter what you do. The tension in the air was almost unbearable as the two stood facing each other. Ethan could feel the energy crackling between them, and he knew that the moment of truth was fast approaching. Vera raised her hand, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. A wave of energy shot out from her, slamming into the wall behind Ara. The stone cracked and the ground shook beneath their feet. Ethan stumbled but quickly regained his balance. You're still weak, Ara, Vera taunted. You can't win. You don't have the strength to stand against me. But Arara didn't back down, stepped forward, her hands glowing with power. I don't need to be as strong as you, she said, her voice filled with defiance. I just need to be strong enough to stand up for myself. Before Vera could respond, Ara unleashed a wave of energy that sent a shockwave through the room. The force of it knocked Ethan off his feet, but he quickly scrambled to stand up. Watching in awe as Ara fought back against her mother's power, the two collided in a burst of energy. The air around them charged with the force of their struggle. The ground beneath them cracked as their powers clashed, sending shockwaves throughout the chamber. Ethan's heart pounded as he watched the battle unfold. Ara wasn't just fighting her mother. She was fighting for her freedom, for her right to choose her own path. But even though Herrera was powerful, it was clear that Vera had the upper hand. Each time Ira unleashed a burst of energy, Vera countered with even more force. The sheer power of Vera's attacks sent Ira stumbling back, her energy flickering as she tried to hold her ground. Ethan could see the strain on Ira's face. She was tiring. The fight was taking everything she had, and he knew she couldn't keep this up much longer. Come on, Herrera, Ethan shouted, his voice filled with urgency. You can do this. You've got the strength to fight her. Ara's eyes flickered toward him for just a moment. She didn't say anything, but the look in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. She was exhausted, but she wasn't giving up. Not now. Not when she was so close. Vera, sensing the shift in Ara's focus, lashed out with another blast of energy. This time, it struck Ara directly in the chest, sending her flying backward. She crashed against the far wall with a sickening thud, her energy flickering as she struggled to stay conscious. Ethan rushed to her side, his heart pounding with fear. Ara, are you okay? Ira gasped for air, her body weak and bruised from the impact. I can't keep doing this, she whispered, her voice strained. Ethan's mind raced. There had to be something he could do. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't even trained for this. But he couldn't let Ira face this alone. He had to help her, no matter what, without thinking. He grabbed the nearest object, the large rock hand, hurled it toward Vera. The rock hit Vera's shoulder with a dull thud, distracting her just long. Enough for Ira to regain her footing. Vera whirled around, her eyes blazing with fury. You dare interfere, human? She growled, her voice like a low growl. You'll regret that. Grout, art, elt, art, 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 was art, 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 s art, 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 You won't hurt her, he said, his voice shaking but determined. Where? Not going anywhere, and neither is she. Vera's gaze flicked to Era, and for a moment, Ethan saw a flash of doubt in her eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it came. With a snarl, Vera raised her hand, preparing to unleash another devastating attack. Era, energy crackling around her, stepped forward, a look of fierce resolve on her face. No, she said firmly. This ends now. Era's energy surged. Brighter and more powerful than ever before. The force of it pushed Vera back, and Ethan could feel the shift in the air. For the first time, he could sense the balance of power beginning to tip in Era's favor. Vera stumbled, surprised by the sheer force of Era's attack. And that's when Ethan saw Itara's true power. She wasn't just a girl fighting for her freedom. She was a force of nature. A being who had the strength to stand up against even the most powerful foes. With one final surge of energy, Era unleashed everything she had, sending Vera flying backward, crashing into the far wall of the chamber. The force of the impact left a massive dent in the stone. And for a moment, there was silence. Ethan watched in awe as Era stood tall, her breathing heavy but steady. She had done it. She had defeated her mother, and in doing so she had won. Her freedom. But as Vera lay on the ground, bruised and unconscious, Era's face softened. She wasn't filled with triumph or joy. Instead, there was a look of sadness in her eyes. She had won, but at a great cost. This isn't how I wanted it to end, Era whispered, her voice filled with regret. I never wanted to hurt her. Ethan stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. You didn't hurt her. You did what you had to do. You're free now, Era, and that's what matters. Era nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She had fought for her freedom, and in the end, she had won. But it had come with a heavy price. And as the dust settled around them, she knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges. But for the first time in her life, Era felt free. This is part 5, where the final confrontation takes place, and Era defeats her mother, Vera, in a dramatic. The quiet of the chamber was almost overwhelming after the battle. Era stood, still breathing heavily, her energy flickering as it slowly faded. Her mother, Vera, lay unconscious on the ground, the force of Era's final attack too much for her to recover from. Ethan stood beside Era, his heart racing from the intensity of what had just happened. He wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, they had one. Era had finally defeated her mother, and she was free. On the other hand, there was a sense of sadness that lingered in the air. Era had never wanted things to end this way. But she had made a choice, and now she had to live with it. Era. Ethan began, but his voice trailed off. He didn't know what to say. He had seen so much in such a short time, and it was hard to process everything that had happened. Era glanced over at him, her expression weary but grateful. I know, she said quietly. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't let her control me anymore. I couldn't live that way. Ethan nodded, understanding the pain in her voice. He could see the toll this had taken on her. She had fought not just for her freedom, but for the right to live her own life. And in the process, she had lost a part of herself. The relationship with her mother would never be the same again. We need to move, Era said suddenly, her voice stronger now. She straightened up, her eyes scanning the chamber. We can't stay here. There might be more of her people coming. Ethan glanced around the room. The hidden base was dark and silent now, its once pulsing energy fading with the defeat of Vera. Where will we go? He asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Ara hesitated for a moment, then looked back at him. I'm not sure, but we need to get off this planet. We can't stay here any longer. I have to go somewhere. Somewhere I can figure out what to do next. Ethan didn't argue. Ara had spent too long running from her past, and now it was time for her to move forward. The universe was vast, and there were countless places they could go. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to leave her side. Together, they left the chamber, stepping back into the cold underground tunnel. The silence of the cave seemed to press in on them, but there was a new sense of determination in Era's steps. She was no longer running. She had made her choice, and now it was time to face whatever came next. As they walked, Ethan couldn't help but wonder what would happen when they left this planet. What kind of life could they have? Would Era ever truly be free from the past that haunted her? And what about him? He had never imagined his life would take such a turn. But now that he had seen the strength in Era, he knew that he couldn't go back to his old life. He had to stay with her, had to help her find her way. I don't know where we're going, Era said after a long silence, her voice filled with uncertainty. But I know we have to leave here. Can't stay on this planet, not after everything that's happened. Ethan nodded. I'll go wherever you go. Era smiled faintly, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. You don't have to stay with me, you know. This is my fight, not yours. I'm not leaving you, Ethan said firmly. You've already changed my life. I can't just walk away now. Era didn't say anything, but she looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something she couldn't quite express. They both knew that their lives had been changed forever, but in that moment, neither of them cared. We're in this together. As they made their way through the tunnel, Era stopped suddenly, her hand going to her side. Ethan glanced at her, concern flashing across his face. Are you okay? He asked quickly. I'm fine, she said, though her voice was strained. It's just... my energy is low. That fight took everything out of me. Ethan frowned. We need to find a place to rest. You can't keep pushing yourself like this. Ara nodded slowly. I know, but we don't have much time. I can't keep hiding forever. They continued walking, though slower now, each step feeling heavier than the last. The quiet of the tunnel was almost comforting after the chaos of the battle, but it was also a reminder of everything they had just been through. Everything that was still ahead. Eventually they reached the surface, the cool night air greeting them as they stepped out into the open. The stars above were bright and distant, but they felt like a new beginning. Yara stood for a moment, looking up at the sky. Her eyes softened, and for the first time she seemed at peace. We'll figure it out, Arer said, more to herself than to Ethan. We'll make it through. I just need time. Ethan nodded, understanding. They both needed time to heal, to find their way in a universe that suddenly felt much bigger than either of them had ever imagined. Where do we go from here? Ethan asked, looking around. The planet seemed so quiet, so still. It was hard to believe they had just fought for their lives here. I don't know yet, Arare said with a small smile. But I think we should start by finding a ship. Can't stay on a planet like this? Not with my past haunting me, Ethan agreed. They needed to move on, to find a place where Ara could be free, where they both could find peace. As they walked toward the nearest spaceport, Ethan felt the weight of everything that had happened. But for the first time, he didn't feel afraid. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing. They were in this together. That was enough.